士德空气净化器应用独特负高压电力技术，免清洗、无耗材、非过滤、高分解、恒净化，常有效，做您身边的清新空气管家。
Hello, everyone. I'm Peter Salovey, and I'm the president of Yale University. And you're watching Whose Time?
全球顶尖的私立研究型大学耶鲁大学呢，今年迎来了它成立的第316年。这所享誉世界的高等学府，有着将近2/3的历史是与中国密切相连的。那么，中国历史上的首位留美学生，也就是被称为中国留学生之父的容闳，就是耶鲁大学1854年的毕业生。而耶鲁大学的现任校长，现年59岁的苏必德呢，他出生于美国的马赛诸塞州的坎布里奇，曾经就读于斯坦福大学，取得了心理学学士学位以及社会学的硕士学位。之后呢，他进入耶鲁大学深造，取得了心理学的博士学位。1986年毕业之后，他以助教的身份进入了耶鲁大学心理学系。2003年起呢，他先后担任过艺术和科学研究生院的院长、耶鲁学院的院长以及耶鲁大学教务长等职务。2012年的11月，苏必德呢被正式任命为耶鲁大学的第23任校长，自2013年1月起正式履职。就在不久前呢，苏必德在北京出席了2017年中国发展高层论坛，在这期间呢，他接受了我们财经时间的专访，而话题呢就是从这所100年高校与中国深厚的渊源和密切的合作开始谈起。
Early 19th century is the time that Yale start to engage with China.
Yeah, Yale has the longest relationship with China of any American university. The very first Chinese student who got an education in North America received it at Yale University. His name was Hong, and he came from South China and came to Yale, studied and graduated in 1854. Then he came back to China and years later encouraged many Chinese boys to come to Yale for an education. And it has been a continuous link between Yale and China ever since.
What's happening between Yale and China in the past few years?
There's many, many things happening with Yale and China. First of all, we have a center here in Beijing. And the Yale Center Beijing hosts more than 200 programs a year, everything from executive education to the arts, to visitors from Yale who are lecturing, many, many different kinds of activities. It's in the central business district, so it's easy to get to, and is really, I think, a very successful university center here in China. In addition, Yale is involved in many centers and dual degree programs or joint degree programs with Chinese universities. We have programs at Beida, at Tsinghua, at Fudan, at Shanghai, Jiaotang, in many different areas: bioinformatics and biostatistics, nanotechnology, biomedical sciences, and we're always looking for ways where areas we have expertise and where there's expertise here in China, and then to work together, attract the very best students, the very best scholars in a collaborative environment.
Mm-hmm. No plan for a research center or even a campus, right?
I don't think we would build a campus, in part because when we want our students to come to China, and many do, virtually every undergraduate at Yale has an international experience at some point in their 4 years. And coming to China is very popular. But if we build a campus and they come to that campus, I'm not sure they're having a genuine international experience. They're having a Yale experience. And we really would rather they experience China on a campus of a Chinese university or in a Chinese business or do research in the field in China. So we've resisted a little bit building campuses and instead try to build partnerships.
Yeah, in China there are some kind of controversy saying why these successful people all donate to Ivy League schools instead of here in China or in other courses. Is that says something about the philanthropy environment here in China, or the excellence of Ivy League schools, or anything?
I think alumni and others will give to wherever they feel grateful. And I think Chinese philanthropists tend to give both to places like Yale, but also within the country too. And I think there's been such enormous wealth creation in recent years that there's plenty of generosity, I think, to go around.
Mm-hmm. So we'll see more of those in the future.
I think we will see more.
Yeah, that's right. In terms of the students, I know there are some controversy back in the US saying Ivy League schools are not admitting enough Asian students. How do you see this, and what's the evolution of Chinese student body in Yale?
Yeah, so the Chinese students were somewhere between our undergraduate programs and our graduate programs. I think there's now 700 or so Chinese students from China, also Chinese American students as well. So it's a rich environment in that way. Our approach to admissions for undergraduates is called holistic admissions. We look at test scores, we look at grades, but we also look at evidence of leadership and future leadership. We also look at the way in which that applicant will contribute to the educational environment. And if you now look at international students, Asian American students, African American students, Latino students, Hispanic students, and Native American students, that's now the majority of students on our campus. And I think we're just trying to create a very diverse, but very stimulating educational environment on the campus.
Yeah, is the Chinese student number increasing or roughly stable?
We increased our international students quite considerably a number of years ago, and with that, the number of Chinese students went up dramatically. And now it's still growing a little bit, but not nearly as fast.
距美国的新任总统特朗普正式就职已经过去了2个多月的时间，而围绕他的争议之声却从来都没有中断过。时间回到去年，特朗普胜选之初所引发的美国各界一片哗然，其中反应最为强烈的群体之一呢，就是美国高校的师生们。他们通过取消课程、集体抗议等等行为来表达对这位新任总统的不满。那么，在特朗普上任2月有余的当下，耶鲁等高校对于他的态度是否有所转变呢？而对于移民禁令等等颇受争议的政策，他们又有着怎样的看法？
Neil Ferguson was here in Tsinghua doing a conversation. He was mentioning what many of his former colleagues at Harvard is in a state of denial on this Trump's election. Yale, of course, have many past American presidents. What's the situation at Yale campus?
Yeah, I think Trump's election was a surprise to many faculty and students. Hillary Clinton was leading in the public opinion polls for months right up until the election. So I think it was a surprise. There are students at Yale on all sides of every political debate. And so there are certainly some students pleased with the election. But I think many students were surprised and some disappointed. But I think we will see what will unfold. There are Yale alumni in the new cabinet, 3 of them, and I am optimistic that they will have a positive influence on our new president.
His immigration ban is kind of widely criticized. Yale News actually reported you show some kind of restraint on this. Do you see its effect on Yale kind of incoming students significant?
To be honest, I don't believe I showed restraint at all. I said that I felt the executive order banning immigration or even travel from certain countries was alarming and not good public policy. I think for universities, we need to create an environment where the very strongest students and the most creative and talented scholars can freely come and go, freely travel. That's in the best interests of our university, and I believe it's in the best interests of our country.
One question related to this is freedom of expression on campus. How do you see this freedom of expression on campus?
Yes.
Under what circumstances should that be allowed?
So, yes. So freedom of expression is a bedrock principle at Yale. We want any idea to be able to be expressed. And we want to make sure that if there's protest against those ideas, it does not prevent other people from hearing those ideas. What that means is sometimes we're going to hear ideas that offend us, even disgust us. But the answer to that is to use your own voice to argue against them. It's a fundamental principle. In that respect, other universities in the United States share this belief. We all are trying to create the most open environments we can for the free exchange of ideas.
And what do you see generally for universities' role within society? In China, universities tend to just teach or do some research. Do you see a significant role for university in political or social discourse?
For Yale, I believe what we are doing is educating leaders for all sectors of society. And so it's very important that we be seen, that we offer the kinds of educational opportunities that allow a student to be a leader wherever they go next, whether it's public service, nonprofit, for-profit sectors. I also think that as a great research university, we make a direct contribution to the improvement of the world through the science, social science, arts, and humanities scholarship that we promote. The cure for diseases, the great technological advances come from university-based research. I sometimes take out my smartphone and I say the things that are inside the smartphone that make it work were developed through university-based research. I say that because it's true. And so we want to improve the world directly through our research, scholarship, and then indirectly through educating the world's leaders for the next generation.
How do you perceive this question of elite education?
Yeah, I think the reality here is the great disparities of wealth that are growing up all over the world, here in China, also in the United States. And there are many people in the US who, as others have benefited from technology, from globalization, they have not. And they feel left behind, and they feel that they are not, that their wealth is decreasing, relatively speaking. Colleges and universities are the most effective way to promote social mobility, to improving oneself relative to one's circumstances. And I think we have to take that mission seriously. My grandparents were immigrants to the United States. They were poor. They came to the US with no money, and they essentially died with no money. But they made sure their children were educated. And the result is that their grandchildren, me, I grew up in middle class. And when we talk about the American dream, that's the American dream. And the key to that American dream is education.
作为一名在情商和心理学方面颇有建树的专家，苏必德呢和他的团队自从上个世纪90年代起就开始进行情商研究与实践，并且在耶鲁大学建立了情商中心。他与约翰梅尔教授开创的情绪治理理论广为人知，由此呢延伸出的梅尔萨洛维库索情绪治理测试，更是被广泛应用到了各个领域。那么情商究竟是什么？对于人们的工作能力、生活质量和人际关系，到底又有着怎样的影响呢？对此，苏必德也给出了他的答案。
You are one of the top researchers on emotional intelligence. You said something along the line that people in relationship should be on the different spectrum. What should be the right situation at work?
Yeah.
Should they have similar kind of emotional intelligence?
It's a good question. First of all, I'm very proud that there's such interest in emotional intelligence here in China, that President Xi mentioned emotional intelligence in one of his speeches. We conducted the first scientific work on emotional intelligence, published it in 1990. It's actually a little amazing to me that people are still interested in the concept now, more than 25 years later. In the workplace, we have generally found that the more emotional intelligence people have, that is, the greater ability they have to identify emotions in themselves and others, to understand them, to manage them, and to use them, the more successful they are in that workplace. We've done some studies to show this. I think what it provides is an additional source of information about yourself, about the environment, the social environment around you, and that information has value. And so the people who have the skills to pay attention to it, essentially they do better.
Any tips from psychology you will give?
I think to understand the world around you and to have empathy with others and to be an engaged individual, you also have to know yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What excites you? What makes you bored? And to try to lead a life where you're using your skills, using your talents, and maximizing the match between what you have to offer and what the social environment is asking of you. My other piece of advice comes from a colleague of mine named Paul Bloom, who wrote a book on happiness, where he discovered that if you have an area of expertise that can be very idiosyncratic, very unusual, but you really become the expert on it, it will give you great pleasure for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm. You also have a address on gratitude.
Yes.
Back in 2014. What we see around the world, but especially in China, is people tend to criticize more, very little gratitude.
Yes.
What do you see?
It's easy to criticize. It's harder to express gratitude. And I think...
How can it be persuaded?
Yeah, the reason why I think it's difficult is because to express gratitude, you have to admit that you couldn't do it all yourself. You had help. And that requires a kind of strength of character to say, I can't do it alone. And I think sometimes that makes us uncertain. Sometimes that's a challenge to our sense of self-worth. But expressing gratitude, recognizing our limits, actually is another key to feeling joy in life. And so I was, in my speech, trying to encourage students to recognize on their graduation day that while they may feel like they accomplished something, and they have, it's also the case that they didn't do it alone.
Mm-hmm. Information is a crucial thing in our modern society. In 2016, we have this issue of some false information. So you also have this address of countering false narratives.
Yes.
So should media do a better job, or social media do a better job, or people should be more discerning, which seems to be a very hard requirement?
And that was my argument, that we live in an age of a lot of media, of social media that moves very quickly. And so it's very easy for stories, ideas that are not based in fact to be transmitted. And so what I'm trying to encourage students to use their education, to use the critical thinking that education encouraged, to use the skills that they have learned in school, to challenge ideas, to ask critical questions, to not accept on the face of it things they hear in the media, only because it's so easy for false ideas to be spread. And if they don't use their skills, they're just contributing to the spread of false narratives.
在美国高等教育的体系当中啊，通识教育颇具特色，而耶鲁呢更是以注重通识教育为主的本科教育而闻名的。通识教育呢又称是博雅教育或者是普通教育，希望能够为学生带来完整的知识结构，构成触类旁通的通用智慧，强调培养人才知识的全面性、能力的创新性。在采访当中，苏必德呢也解读了美国高校通识教育的内涵，以及对中国高校的借鉴意义。
You have been advocating liberal arts education, or say general education, this year. Say for Chinese universities, I think Tsinghua, Professor Chen at the School of Economics and Management is trying that very hard. But for most schools, how can they come up with the resources, and how can students be aroused with this general environment of more applied environment?
I mean, the idea behind liberal education is a classroom where ideas are discussed, challenged, debated across the curriculum. And the result is the development of general skills that will serve you well in any aspect of life. Skills in thinking creatively, skills in communicating, skills that let you work with others. The other thing that a liberal education does is create an orientation to learning for the rest of your life. So it doesn't end with school. School is just the beginning. It really changes the emphasis from the what of learning to how and why. In other words, in teaching in a liberal arts environment, I'm not just trying to transfer information I have to you. I'm trying to create an orientation and a set of mental skills in you that allow you to seek new information from the whole world for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm. That's very important. Just wondering about the mechanics. Does, say, Harvard, Yale, Columbia, at their start have such strong liberal arts education or say faculty? How does that come about?
Yeah, it changed over the course of these universities. Yale started, for example, as a university that educated ministers for the clergy. But in 1828, a group of Yale professors wrote a report that in many ways is one of the fundamental statements of liberal arts education. And it said we needed to move away from memorization. We needed to move away from some of the traditional areas of study and let students have some choice and have a more interactive experience in the classroom.
So this capability of doing liberal arts education is gradually built up.
It evolves over time in American institutions. And it does require a lot of interaction in the classroom.
Last question. So what is your vision for Yale going forward?
Yeah, so we are working in a few areas to help Yale be the greatest version of itself that it can be a great research university of the world with a extremely strong commitment to students and their education at its center. We're strengthening our sciences by building in areas of unique specialization, as well as strengthening areas that will become increasingly important in the 21st century. We are making sure that our wonderful arts programs, art, architecture, music, and drama, have an impact across the whole campus and are linked to other programs. We are bringing our humanities together so that scholars from different fields interact with each other to a greater extent. And we are increasing our social sciences focused on public policy issues. All of that will require a lot of insight from our faculty and will take a while to evolve over time. But I believe that if we can bring to Yale the most extraordinary scholars from anywhere in the world to serve on our faculty, then we can accomplish all of those goals and be an absolutely #1 university in the entire world. I think we will continue to try to be a leader in improving the lives of individual students, in creating leaders for the next generation, and having a direct impact through scholarship and research. Our mission statement, first sentence, is Yale University's mission is to improve the world today and for future generations. And I take that mission very seriously.